They'd run the classic good cop, sly cop interrogation. Luca and Rollo ducked behind a barrel, leaving Beck to her task. With a few crisp snaps, she roused Mr. Tolliver. Mr. Tolliver looked down and shifted a bit, testing his restraints. Beck caught herself before letting the surprise manifest on her face. She'd already gotten him to reveal his relation to Gran. This was going to be easy. Mr. Tolliver wriggled a bit in his restraints. Beck quickly removed the ropes. Mr. Tolliver rubbed the growing knot on his forehead. Beck twirled her hand, as if to prompt Mr. Tolliver to finish her thought. Beck shook her head and clicked her tongue. Mr. Tolliver let out an amused huff in agreement. Beck was on a roll now, playing Mr. Tolliver like a fiddle. Heading for the stairs, Mr. Tolliver hesitated and turned to Beck with a puzzled look. She grinned and gave him a peppy wave. With a shrug, he continued up the stairs, whistling a jaunty tune. Beck blinked slowly in disappointment. She turned to the table and began tearing small scraps of paper. Beck marked each scrap of paper and leaned back. Luca and Beck looked at Rollo with amazement. looked around nervously. Eris's cry hung in the air. Solomon stood proudly at the entrance to the drugstore, holding a brown bag overflowing with black licorice. Solomon shoveled a surprising amount of licorice into his mouth. Beck cupped her hands on the glass to peek inside. Beck flung open the door, and they all squeezed in. Luca cracked his knuckles and entered the letters into the keypad. The inside of the phone booth dropped loose from its shell. Without even the space to panic, they closed their eyes, held their breath, and accepted their fate. Suddenly, the chaotic descent slowed to an effortless landing. It was unclear where they ended up, but at least it was solid ground. The air was stagnant and smelled vaguely of chlorine. hovered over the field of blinking buttons. Joseph waited for a moment in silence. He gestured toward the strange tubes. Nuncreed let out a growl of a sigh. He shook his head wistfully. Nuncreed took a menacing step towards the children. Luca began to laugh. The color drained from Nuncreed's face. Nuncreed grabbed Luca by the shoulders. His eyes were frantic. A jolt of realization struck Mr. Nuncreed. The cold, hard truth. Beck leapt up, allowing the suction to yank her into the dark. Dimness eclipsed around her like the shutter of a camera as she seemed to cover great distance in mere moments. Her only points of reference were glints of upcoming turns, which approached with frightening speed, only to carom her gracefully along. She heard the tinny, distant echoes of Rollo's glee. Once she stopped fighting against it, the ride was impossibly smooth. Then, all of a sudden, as if minutes had passed in an instant, light blazed into view. A burst of wintry air snuffed across her face, and she was flung out into the cold. As they rounded the corner to the frozen town square, they spotted Mr. Nuncreed inching cautiously toward a pit at its center. He held his arms out gingerly, as if approaching a beast in the wild. Upon closing the distance, Luca recognized what Nuncreed was after. Gran stood confidently at the edge, one arm outstretched over the abyss. Nearby, a wheelbarrow had been emptied out. She held a lit torch, which flickered. Mr. Nuncreed turned back toward the kids, desperation in his eyes. Rollo and Beck held steadfast in awe. Luca approached closer. Mr. Nuncreed spun back toward Gran, his voice growing louder. Mr. Nuncreed winced with anguish. His voice hardened. They both now yelled, not to each other, but at fate itself, making their peace with long-held burdens. The wind howled with encouragement. They menaced at each other, both catching their breath. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Amid a blur of emotions and memories, Luca's mind flooded with questions. The wind calmed, as if to give him the stage. And in the stillness, he began to hum. After the death of his father, Luca had trouble sleeping. Each night, his mother would sit at the foot of his bed and hum a gentle melody, It was the only thing that could calm his mind. The only thing that, however briefly, could make it all seem okay. That melody pervaded every memory Luca had of his mother. Shivering in the raw snow, he began to hum it out loud. Gran lowered the torch, listening closely. As recognition slowly set in, her heart sank. Those countless nights of consolation, the incomparable loss they shared together. She let the torch fall to the snow and sizzle out. A few steps toward Luca was all she could bear before dropping to the snow herself. Through a flood of tears, she began to hum along, note for note. Luca lifted his head in astonishment. The last time he heard that melody was the last night he saw his mother. Luca blinked through blurry, watery eyes, trying to see more clearly. He could just make out the impression of a familiar face. He peered across the snowscape at the woman on her knees. Something about her was undeniably his mother. Only smaller, older, changed. Luca sprinted as fast as he could toward his mother. They held each other close, and the cold retreated from their bodies. Eleanor looked down at Luca, tightening her embrace in an appeal for forgiveness. Joseph slumped into the cold, wet snow. For the first time in a long time, her voice felt like her own again. Luca gazed down at Nuncreed with pity. He looked small. Joseph stared into the snow as if searching it for answers. Chapter 9. The Devil You Know. 7 months ago, Eleanor Van Horn crept down the maze of sterile hallways under Perennial Harvest. She stopped in front of the large steel door marked Deep Engineering. No turning back now. She raised a trembling hand. The stolen keycard worked as promised, and the door buzzed open with mechanical efficiency. She was immediately hit with the smell of disinfectant. It was some sort of laboratory. In one corner was a desk covered in papers. Across the room stood a tall metal pod with hoses protruding from its base. She rushed to the desk and began shifting through the piles of papers. They were experiment reports on something called Tempus Liquamen. There were dozens of them, every one stamped failed. Eleanor heard the sharp echo of footsteps approaching. She was out of time. Her eyes scanned the room, eventually landing on the strange pod. Muttering a curse under her breath, she dashed over and dove inside. Mr. Kerr addressed the crowd with a sarcastic tone. Whispers filtered through the crowd. Torment dragged on Joseph Nuncrete's face. He paused for a moment, plucking a piece of fuzz from his sweater and discarding it to the ground. Kerr gave a bow of deference. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Solomon pulled a glass vial from his pocket. In one smooth motion, he downed its contents. A triumphant smile grew across Solomon's lips. His body and face began to contort and expand as he disappeared into a belching green mist. A hushed horror gripped the crowd. This is a story about change. Sharper examined his new hands. Sharper choked out a crude squawk of a laugh. Frustrated grumbles sprinkled through the crowd. William Kerr gave a subtle nod to the clipboards. A helpless quiet settled over the crowd. Sharper addressed the crowd with indignant pride. He'd planned this moment for so long that now, at the deed's fruition, it almost felt frivolous. Mr. Kerr flourished a preposterously elaborate bow. Sharper coughed up one final laugh and cracked his knuckles. And so, Sharper set about remaking the town in his own image. The fertilizer factory soon reopened for business. Sales rose steadily as more and more farmers across the countryside began to swear by its miraculous properties. Beacon Pines became famous, a secretive town that, for the right price, shared its gifts with all. Gifts that became more and more necessary in a world where winters grew longer and longer. The end. This is wrong, but things are becoming clearer now. You can feel it, right? We can't let Sharper win. He might just be the key to this whole thing. Let's see. And in the stillness, he began to weep. It was all just too much. Falling to his knees, Luca whimpered softly. The tears crystallized as they hit the snow. Gran stared at Luca for a moment with warm sympathy, remembering why this was all necessary. She stiffened up and brandished the torch at Mr. Nuncreed. Ignoring his final plea, Gran flung the torch into the deep darkness. She smiled and exhaled in relief. Mr. Nuncreed moaned in resignation. The torch echoed as it ricocheted down the hole, punctuated with a thunderous thud. Before Gran could finish, the ground shook her to silence. Gran only had time to spin around and run to Luca. Her attempt to shield him, an honorable but trifling act. Unflinching love, pitted against an unthinking horror. There was no contest. Her warm embrace froze in an instant. That is where they remain, fixed in place, forever. And so, our story ends on this melancholy scene. In a town brought low by its secrets, sits the frozen statues of a misguided band of meddlers. The end. Well, that was dire. On the bright side, we finally figured out where all the ice is coming from. Now, we just need to find a way to deal with a mystic, unfathomable force of nature. They'd run the classic good cop, chill cop interrogation. Luca walked calmly to the light switch, flicking it off and on a few times. Mr. Tolliver shook his head, gathering his wits. He looked over to find Luca, who returned a calming grin. Rollo and Beck emerged from hiding to give a timid wave. Luca glanced over to Rollo and Beck, who replied with skeptical looks. Mr. Tolliver exhaled with disappointment. Luca gestured to the corner. Luca looked again to Rollo and Beck. This time they shrugged. Luca began to slowly loosen the bindings. Mr. Tolliver gently rubbed his wrists. He edged imperceptibly toward the stairs as he spoke. Before the kids had even noticed his movement, Mr. Tolliver was at the light switch. He punctuated his final words by flicking the switch and rushing up the stairs. Beck darted to the wall and turned back on the lights. It was too late. Rollo confirmed what they all heard. Mr. Tolliver's muffled voice came from behind the door. They looked bewildered at each other. They heard the staccato thump of quick steps exiting the house. The kids looked down in resignation. This isn't how it goes in Hank Atomic. For some reason, they'd always assumed it was up to them to save their town. Luca opened his mouth, hoping to conjure some magical words to make this right. Only a hollow croak escaped. The end. Well, we certainly aren't going to find a grand resolution to our tale locked in a basement. Back to the drawing board. There was a malice lurking behind those eyes, like a trap ready to spring. Luca felt the weight of Nuncreed's hand on his shoulder. Something wasn't right. He didn't know why, but something was telling Luca to get out of there. Luca twisted free of Nuncreed's grasp. The two scurried off, eagerly formulating a plan. aired a long holler into the woods. Luca felt his eyes getting heavy and plopped into the beanbag. He conceded to its lumpy embrace. Once again, Luca found himself in a vast black expanse. This time, he knew exactly where to go. He took a single confident step forward. The world flickered and pulsed. He found himself standing in front of the frigid air of a blazing campfire. The source. He plopped down cross-legged and gazed into the cold flame, waiting. Soon enough, the fire began to die out, popping sporadically, until all that was left was a single ember. Luca stood up and dusted himself off. He plucked the glowing ember from the cold ash, examined it, and slid it into his pocket, a keepsake. The voice of his father spoke behind him. "You made me proud, Buckaroo." Luca turned to face him. "Dad, what is this place?" A warm grin grew across his father's face. "A place where everything that has been and everything that could be all wait together." Luca found himself staring at his father's face, trying as hard as he could to memorize every single detail. "Wait? For what?" Another voice spoke out as Luca's doppelganger stepped forward. "That's up to you." Without knowing why, Luca began to weep. Is any of this real? Are you real?" Luca's father bent down to smudge away a tear. "Of course. I'm as real as the part of you that misses me." Luca turned to look at the older version of himself. "And you?" The doppelganger choked back tears. "I'm as real as the part of you that's angry he's gone. Does that make sense?" Through his tears, Luca laughed. "I think so." His father pulled him in for an embrace. "Time to go, Buckaroo." Luca was startled from his dream by a banging on the floor. A commanding voice rumbled from below. Just as Luca sprang to lock the entry hatch, the door knocked open. Chapter 5. Dangers Big and Small. Luca stumbled back. He heard the rope ladder creak under significant weight. Keeping his eyes fixed on the hatch, he inched backward to the balcony. As his hand grasped the door handle, Luca froze. A large figure clumsily wriggled up through the hole. The large figure cocked its head inquisitively. Luca's jaw dropped. He peered more closely at the man standing in front of him. Something about him was undeniably Rollo, only bigger, older, changed. Rollo proudly presented his hands to Luca. Luca moved to the side and pointed Rollo to his reflection in the balcony window. His hands shot up to his face. Rollo shadowboxed a few jabs. With a yelp, Rollo dove behind Luca. She shot a nervous glance at Rollo. Beck's eyes narrowed. Ilona tried to put on a smile. She sighed, and after a moment, looked down at Beck sympathetically. She flashed a sly grin and tousled Beck's hair. Luca gave Rollo a quick elbow to the ribs. Beck flicked a large sheet of paper out of her pocket and slammed it on the floor. Rollo started to wiggle with excitement. Chapter 6. The Heist. They spent the night's end huddled around that small map, formulating a plan to infiltrate the headquarters of Perennial Harvest. It would be no small feat, a modern facility equipped with all manner of technology, not to mention the swarm of clipboards that would most certainly be scattered throughout. By the time the sun began to peek through the car window used as a makeshift balcony door, all were in agreement. This could just work. The final day before the festival would be used to prepare. They'd need to pool every resource at their disposal, pull every favor with a thread. Even enlist some unsavory characters around town with important tasks only they were suited for. Luckily, there was enough ill will and mistrust toward Perennial Harvest that alliances could be found at a bargain. Luca, Beck, and Rollo rubbed their eyes as they exited the treehouse. They hadn't slept at all that night. There was no time. The festival was to begin in one day, and they each had their assignments. He waved vaguely at Rollo's sizable figure. Beck snorted an involuntary giggle. They each looked at each other with sleepy confidence and nodded. Jeff wheezed out a long snicker. The joy in Jeff's face drained instantly. Looking into the sullen eyes of his would-be accomplice, Luca blurted out the first word that came to mind. Luca wasn't ready to give up so easily. He shouted out again. Jeff's brow perked up. Sensing some traction, Luca carried on with vigor. Jeff's scowl faded with a sigh. One good stomp of the foot was all Jeff needed to drive his point home. Luca offered out his open hand to seal the deal. With a firm and dusty grip, Jeff reciprocated. Iggy raised an eyebrow suspiciously. Iggy gave a reluctant shrug. Iggy considered the point. Luca knew they'd need Iggy and Tish to pull this off. He tried again. Iggy gave a reluctant shrug. Iggy considered the point. A wild-eyed grin spread across Iggy's face. Iggy glanced over to Tish, who nodded in agreement. With a quick nod, Luca was off. Iggy gazed up at Tish with a smile. A single tear ran down Tish's cheek. Chapter 7. Into the Hive. A good heist requires preparation, and thorough preparation takes time, something they had precious little of. So far, everything was in order. Jeff, Iggy, and Tish all agreed to do their part. Beck radioed Luca that night with a simple and covert message. "We're locked and loaded on my end." And Rollo, after a lengthy confession, managed to persuade Roxy and Fitz to help. He stowed away in mission control for the night to avoid attracting attention. Rollo, being uniquely suited for the role, would be the first to breach Perennial Harvest. The outfit provided by Jeff wasn't perfect, but a convincing disguise is 10% wardrobe, 90% confidence. Rollo took a few vigorous breaths and shook out his arms. He had to think quick. Rollo sighed, adjusting his tool belt. With a stroke of his mustache, Rollo proceeded into the Perennial Harvest headquarters. He stammered and flipped through the pages of his clipboard. Rollo interrupted with urgency in his voice. Rollo panicked. The distraction was enough for Rollo to regain his confidence. The clipboard fumbled around in a frenzy. Solomon stopped in his tracks. A veneer of confusion flashed across Solomon's face. His words rushed out dramatically. Solomon's facade briefly faltered. Luca happened to notice a plaque above the door. Luca tried the handle. Solomon leaned forward to examine the mechanism. Luca smiled and looked at his watch. She mimed a quick hat tip and ambled off with a whistle. The light on the keypad changed from red to green. Luca switched on his walkie-talkie. On the computer screen, a green cursor blinked in a password field. Luca pecked out his best guess, underground secrets. The screen blinked to life. Columns of green numbers glowed on a black background. Solomon's jaw clenched into a half smile. Luca quickly scanned the columns for number 24601. Once again, Luca scrutinized the numbers on the screen. In that moment of distraction, Solomon reached forward and pressed a large red button. He quickly skimmed the screen with his finger. Mr. Kerr approached with a sneer and spoke into his walkie-talkie. With self-satisfaction, he called into the hallway. Nellie leaned over to examine his teeth. Solomon muttered inaudibly. Solomon once again muttered under his breath. Luca tugged on each of the cabinets. Luca held his hand up to the ashtray. With a subtle, quivering lip, a smile crawled across Solomon's face. They heard the trampling of frantic footsteps from the hallway. Her eyes searched the floor in thought. Solomon watched eagerly, waiting for the flicker of epiphany. With a sickened look, she peered into his soul. Solomon clapped with genuine delight. Solomon glanced down, examining his youthful form. Kerr presented it with a theatrical twirl of the hand. Before he could finish, Rollo snatched the vial from Kerr's palm. Rollo casually tossed the vial to Luca. Luca jiggled the vial mockingly. She held it tightly behind her back. Solomon sighed, speaking in crisp, measured syllables. He pursed his lips with feigned sincerity. A deep uncertainty washed over Beck. She looked to Nellie shakily. With a dispirited nod, Nellie sighed in defeat. Beck slowly approached Solomon. With apprehension, Beck conceded. Solomon pocketed the vial and brushed off his shoulder with a sharp flick. The blood drained from Kerr's face. Solomon shook his head with gratification. A muffled applause resonated faintly through the walls. Nellie was staring at the floor, deep in thought. The color dropped from Luca's face. Luca was overwhelmed with emotion. A sudden explosion sounded from the hull. Chapter 8. Comeuppance. Ears still ringing, Gran picked herself up off the ground. Through the dust and smoke, she looked over to see Mrs. Fratelli helping Hiram Tolliver to his feet. She'd had to beg, borrow, and steal to acquire those explosives. How many nights had she spent visualizing how she'd use them to make things right? And now, her one shot at destroying the source, that damned hole that swallowed so much of her life, was gone. Traded for this jagged hole in a wall and a foolhardy shot at rescuing Rollo. With Fratelli and Tolliver at her side, she stepped through. It was a strange feeling. The last time she'd stalked this maze of hallways, it was in a different body. They quickly rounded a corner to find a group of clipboards guarding a door. Something worth guarding is probably something worth seeing. She leapt forward, brandishing her cane. If her last chance at vengeance for things lost was truly gone, she would just have to fight to keep what she still had. They made their way out from deep within Perennial Harvest, just as Solomon finished up his speech. Solomon pulled a glass vial from his pocket. In one smooth motion, he downed its contents. A triumphant smile grew across Solomon's lips. With a mischievous look, Beck elbowed Luca. "Remember when I had the vial behind my back?" I might have tweaked his wonder potion with a little junk. His body and face began to contort and expand as he disappeared into a belching green mist. As the last of what was once Sharper Valentine wafted into the air, the crowd began to disperse, still numb from what they had just observed. Sharper Valentine was gone for good. His end would be a new beginning for Beacon Pines. A new chance to let go of the things they had lost and grab hold of a new future. The end. Well, I'd be lying if I said that wasn't a bit gratifying. If that feels to you like a good note to end on, I won't stand in your way. Tweaked his wonder potion with a little malice. His body and face began to contort and expand as he disappeared into a belching green mist. The crowd gazed in stunned silence at the now empty stage. The quiet was broken when William Kerr sprinted off stage and into the distance. He was never seen around Beacon Pines, or anywhere else for that matter, again. Watching the silhouette of Kerr disappear over the horizon, Luca began to laugh. First, a low chuckle that became uncontrolled, heaving laughter. Through his tears, he was vaguely aware that the crowd had begun to laugh with him. The end. That was unexpected. Perhaps a bit of an absurd ending for my taste, but who am I to say? I'm only writing the damn thing. I might have tweaked his wonder potion with a little change. His body and face began to contort and expand as he disappeared into a belching green mist. Eris awkwardly cradled the squirming child. She looked to her brother, her voice shaking with uncertainty. She looked back down at the infant with equal parts kindness and terror in her eyes. With a shake of her head, Eris addressed the crowd with a stern scowl. Epilogue. Beacon Pines' coldest summer on record came and went without much fanfare. Folks shared what they had, and none were left wanting. The new school year was ushered in by the falling leaves of autumn. After everything Luca, Rollo, and Beck had been through, middle school was bearable. The chill of winter didn't seem to bother people much. They kindled a hope for a better future in their hearts. When spring arrived, farmers planted their crops with a sense of joy and optimism. And as the dawn of the first day of summer came again, its light slowly spread through the shallow valley. It crept over the town square, across the river, past the neglected welcome sign, and came to rest on a young boy sleeping at dawn, his mind at peace, knowing he is here for a reason. When Perennial Harvest collapsed, most of the clipboards skipped town. But some stuck around and dedicated themselves to making things right. her best to ignore the tears welling in her eyes. Mrs. Fratelli glowed with a carefree smile. Mrs. Fratelli sighed with a zen-like calm. Closing her eyes, Miss Hatch took a deep, relaxing breath. He playfully waggled an apple. Over the school year, Cato and Bert had become close friends. It typically went on like this for quite some time. Piper's shoulder, laid stealthily inside a large volume of mathematics, was the first issue of Hank Atomic. Mr. Nuncreed shook his head. With perennial harvest gone, the transportation tubes were left unused. Well, maybe not completely unused. The Valentine Mansion loomed over every other building in town, both figuratively and literally. think this is it. The end I've been waiting for. Honestly, I began to lose hope of ever finding it. But then you came along. I don't know exactly how to thank you. It's hard to explain how much this means to me. It's funny, now that our time together is finally ending, I'm at a loss for words. Let's just watch the end together.